For 40 years, it was just a threat. But now, it's a reality. The Strait of Hormuz is, for all intents and purposes, closed, and the whole world is holding its breath. We're going to break down what that actually means right now.
So it really all boils down to this one question. How can a single, narrow stretch of water, just a few dozen miles wide, threaten to bring the global economy to its knees? Well, the answer, in a word, is energy.
Because that one waterway is the choke point for nearly a quarter of the world's entire energy supply. A massive amount of oil and natural gas has to flow through the Strait of Hormuz. And with it shut down, prices everywhere could be about to skyrocket.
You know, what's really shocking here is just how fast this all happened. Iran has been threatening to close the strait for decades, but it was always seen as, just talk. This time, they acted within 14 hours of the conflict kicking off.
So here's the bottom line. As long as the strait is an active war zone, no commercial ship is going to risk passing through. That means, for all practical purposes, the strait stays closed until this conflict ends, or until Iran's navy is completely taken out of the picture.
Now, this isn't your typical war. It's what military folks call asymmetric. You've got two sides with completely different levels of firepower and, more importantly, completely different ideas of what winning even looks like.
And this gets right to the heart of it. The US and its allies are looking to just overwhelm Iran with better tech and superior firepower. But according to the source material, Iran isn't trying to win in that classic sense. Their goal is simply to survive and to make this war so incredibly painful, politically and financially, that the West is eventually forced to back down.
So how could they possibly pull that off? Well, the analysis points to this swarm strategy against the U.S. aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln. The best way to think about it is like ants swarming an elephant. The idea is to throw hundreds of cheap, small boats and drones at the carrier's defenses, forcing these incredibly advanced systems to just burn through all their missiles. And once the giant is defenseless, that's when Iran can hit it with their more powerful weapons. But here's the thing, if that strategy actually works, the fallout would be catastrophic. This quote really explains it perfectly. A great power like the United States just cannot accept that kind of direct, humiliating defeat. A successful strike on an aircraft carrier could force a massive escalation. We're talking about boots on the ground, or maybe even putting the nuclear option on the table.
Now, let's pull the lens back a bit, because this conflict isn't just happening in a bubble. Other countries in the region are being forced to pick a side, and maybe no one is in a tougher spot than Pakistan.
I mean, just imagine this balancing act. On one side, Pakistan has a formal military and financial alliance with Saudi Arabia, one of Iran's biggest rivals. But on the other side, it shares a massive border, deep cultural history, and, you guessed it, a reliance on oil from its neighbor Iran. Talk about a diplomatic tightrope.
So, what's the move? The analysis predicts a path of very careful neutrality. You'll likely see Pakistan condemn attacks from all sides, to look good for the international community. But when it comes to actually doing something, it's going to follow its own hardcore interests and stay out of the fight. Okay, let's zoom out even further, because the most influential players in this whole situation might be the ones who haven't fired a single shot. For global powers like China and Russia, this war is a massive strategic opportunity. China's role here is quiet, but it's really significant. They've reportedly given Iran access to their satellite system, a direct rival to GPS. They're offering support in cyber warfare. And maybe most importantly, they're watching every move, studying U.S. military tactics, and loving the fact that America is distracted while China continues what it calls its peaceful rise.
And really, the ultimate prize for both Russia and China is strategic. They're hoping this turns into another long, expensive, and demoralizing quagmire for the United States. Basically, a 21st century Vietnam that just bleeds America of its resources, its money, and its global influence.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. What happens when the shooting stops? The analysis suggests this conflict won't just end. It's going to fundamentally change the rules of global security. The lesson that nations seem to be learning from all this is pretty stark. If you have nuclear weapons, you don't get attacked. Just look at North Korea. And if you give them up for promises of security like Ukraine did, you get invaded. The logical and frankly terrifying conclusion is that other regional powers, especially in the Arab world, are now going to race to get their own nuclear weapons. It's seen as the only real guarantee of survival. And that could trigger a massive shift in global alliances.
The source speculates we could see a whole new security bloc emerge, one led by China and Russia, with Iran and Pakistan joining in. And here's the real shocker. It could even pull in former U.S. allies like Saudi Arabia, who might start to feel like they just can't count on the West for protection anymore.
And so that leaves us with this one final, chilling question. If this is the new world order being forged right now in the Strait of Hormuz, one based on pure, hard power, the simple, brutal reality might be that being weak is a luxury that no nation can afford.